Hi, everybody. Great to see you again. I bet you can guess where I am. I'm at St. George's Church, and I'm looking forward to having some time with you, reading the Bible stories like we've been doing. I have a picture for you. See if you remember who this is. Right here, that little baby. Who is that baby? Do you remember? That little baby was put in a basket by his mother. And what did she do with that basket? She put the basket in the Nile River in Egypt. Remember? Because there was a king, a bad king in Egypt, who wanted to kill all the baby boys. All the baby boys who belonged to God's people. The Israelites. Remember that word, Israel? Any baby boys who were Israelites, that bad king in Egypt wanted to kill. So that mother made a little basket, put some pitch in it so it would float, and then she wrapped her wee baby boy up and put him in the reeds and sent his big sister down to the river to wait. Who was she waiting for? She was waiting for the king's daughter, for Pharaoh's daughter to come, because she knew she took her afternoon bath there. And sure enough, Pharaoh's daughter saw that little basket and sent one of her servants to go get it. And who was in that little basket? That baby. What was his name? Moses. Moses. M-O-S-E-S. Moses. And that name, Moses, means taken out of the water. I got something to show you. Now, here, this could be maybe like the basket. Maybe. Probably it was a little different shape. Maybe it would have been longer. And remember, it would have had all that pitch, that black tar painted inside to make it waterproof. And then his mummy would have wrapped him up in a little towel or a little blanket. This is my little Moses. And put him in the basket. And then she carefully put the basket in the river. And his big sister watched over him from a distance, very quietly. And then the Pharaoh's daughter came down and saw the basket, and her servant brought the basket out of the water, and they lifted out little Moses. And his name means taken out of the water. And then the princess, Pharaoh's daughter, had one of the Israelite women, one of the Israelite mummies, actually it was Moses' mother, to nurse him and care for him. The Lord worked it all out, didn't he? Well, I want to read you a story now about Moses after he grew up. So this is little Moses. Going to put him back in the basket. We're just pretending, aren't we? Going to put him back in the basket. So wait a second, Moses. Wave goodbye. Have him all wrapped up here. Just a second, we'll get him to wave goodbye because he's going back in his basket. Bye-bye. Moses is going in his basket. Bye-bye. Here he goes. He's a pretty good little fella. Here he is. But here he is. Here's a drawing of him when he was a man. Ooh, he's got a lot of hair, doesn't he? And he's got a beard and a big mustache. Wow. Babies grow hair fast, though, don't they? So as he got to be a baby, he would have got his hair, and then he got to be a man, and he grew a mustache and a beard. Well, this story is called The Bush That Didn't Burn. Wow. The bush that did not burn. When Moses grew up, he saw how cruel the Egyptians were to God's people of Israel. Moses tried to help his people, but Pharaoh became angry with him. So Moses ran away into the desert. The desert, a lot of sand, very hot, no trees, not much water. The desert. Moses lived with a shepherd in the desert. Year after year, he took care of the sheep. He grew old, and his hair turned gray. Every day was about the same as any other. Then one day, something very strange happened. Whoa, look at that! Look at the fire coming out of that. But look, it's still green. It hasn't turned all black from the fire. Moses saw a bush burning with fire, but the bush did not burn up. Then he saw that God was in the fire. God said, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." God said, "I want you to bring the children of Israel out of Egypt." I think God also said something else, actually. He said, "Take off your shoes. You're standing on holy ground." And then he told Moses he had a big job for him to do. He wanted him to lead God's people, Israel, out of the land of Egypt, where they'd been living for hundreds of years. But Moses was afraid. What if the people won't listen to me? He asked. "What do you have in your hand?" God said. "I have a staff," said Moses. "A staff? Throw down your staff," God commanded. When Moses threw down his staff, it turned into a snake. Moses was afraid and ran away. "Now pick up the snake," said God. What do you think happened? You're right. The snake turned back into a staff. "If the children of Israel don't believe you," said God, "show them this miracle." So Moses got ready to go back to Egypt. Well, I brought a staff from downstairs. We were looking at this recently, and usually the shepherds have their staff in the Christmas play, don't they? Well, here it is. See, it's got that little crook at the end, which the shepherd can use to kind of hook the sheep back gently. And he's got this end of the stick just to be able to poke any wild animal that might come. And God said to Moses, "What do you have in your hand, Moses?" And he said, "My staff." And God said, "Throw down your staff." And when Moses did, it turned into a snake. Whoa! And then God said, "Now pick up your staff, Moses." And when he reached down his hand and grabbed the snake, it turned back into a staff. And God said, if the people of Israel won't listen to you, show them this miracle. Wow. Well, Moses did that. And he told the people that God wanted to lead them out of Israel, out of Egypt. You see, something was happening with God's people. And that's what the next part of this story is about. The people of Israel had cried out to God for help. They were working long hours, and so in such hot weather. And they were making bricks. That was their job, to make bricks. They had to gather straw and mix it with the mud and form them into little rectangles and pack them down and bake them in the sun. And the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, wanted more bricks made, more bricks made. Come on, faster, faster, faster. And the people of Israel were exhausted. So they cried out to the Lord. And the Lord heard their prayer. He always hears our prayers. He knows what you need before you even ask him. Isn't that amazing? He, as our Heavenly Father, and God is our Heavenly Father, he knows what you need before you even ask him. And that's how it was with his people, Israel. And that's why God spoke to Moses through the burning bush. He was calling to Moses, getting him ready to lead his people out of Egypt because they were having such a hard time. Here goes the story. Moses went to Pharaoh in Egypt. God says to let his people go, said Moses. But Pharaoh just laughed. I don't know God, he said, and I will not let them go. Look at Pharaoh. He looks really mean there. I don't know God, he said. I won't let them go. He wouldn't let them go because he was getting so much work out of them. After that, Pharaoh made the Israelites work even harder. You're lazy, he said. From now on, you must find your own straw to make bricks. You're lazy. That's why you're complaining. They weren't lazy. It was hard work. But now Pharaoh made it twice as hard. The Israelites, the people of Israel, the Israelites came to Moses. And they said, now Pharaoh hates us even more now that you've gone to him and told him to let us go. Now he hates us. So Moses prayed, and God answered, I will send 10 terrible plagues, and I will send them on Pharaoh and the people of Egypt. And after that, Pharaoh will let my people go. Wow, 10 terrible plagues? I wonder what that is. Let's try to count to 10, because that's a lot of plagues. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's go backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 plagues. Now, a plague is something that affects everybody. It could be a sickness. It could be like something else. It could be like bugs that eat all the grass, or it could be like flies, like a whole bunch of flies that are everywhere, like the plague of flies. Right now, people might say that COVID-19 is a plague. It's something that affects everybody. And there were going to be 10 of these, 10 that God was going to send on who? Pharaoh and the people of Egypt. Why? Because Pharaoh would not let God's people go. He wanted to continue to treat them as his slaves. 10 plagues. Here goes the first one. The first plague God sent was on the rivers. The water turned to blood, and no one could drink it. Wow. Remember that Nile River? Well, the water in the Nile River became red. It was turned to blood, and nobody could drink it. But even the water in the bowls in the kitchen, even the water in Pharaoh's cup became blood. Imagine his cereal bowl. Maybe he had a really fancy cereal bowl, and he went to, or maybe this is his his shaving bowl, and he goes to shave, and the water in it had turned to blood. That plague of blood was everywhere. Wow. Everywhere the water in Egypt was turned to blood. Wow. The second plague God sent was the plague of frogs. There were frogs everywhere. But still, Pharaoh wouldn't change his mind and let God's people go. Imagine if you opened up your cupboard and there was a frog looking at you. Imagine if you went to put your shoes on and there was a frog inside. Imagine if you went to put your shirt on and there was a frog in the pocket. There were frogs everywhere, all over the place. It would drive you crazy. I brought some frogs. Well, not real frogs, but I have some to show you. First frog. He kind of looks like a monkey to me, but can you see how his legs are just down like a frog's legs, like he's a jumper? He kind of has like a monkey head on him, but he really is a frog. So he would be frog number 1. Now, frog number 2 is my favorite one. He's got that little, he's kind of got that little teddy bear look to him. But this yellow part is the big chin where the frog makes the big rubber, 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 rubber. It's hard to see frogs. Like, it won't be long when we're outside and we'll hear that at nighttime. We'll hear the bullfrogs going rubber, rubber, rubber. But he does kind of look like a teddy bear because he's got these two, hello. That's frog number 2. Frog number 3. This was made for Gregory or Kelly. This is his mouth. Whoops. Here's his mouth. And these are his little legs. I'm going to put them sideways. Whoops. Here you go. So a plague of frogs. What was the first plague? The plague of blood. Water was turned into blood. Second plague? Plague of frogs. How many plagues altogether? 10. That's right. Okay, and where are these plagues? In Egypt. Why? Because, see if you remember, Pharaoh, he was the king of Egypt. See, I got my blue or my purple robe on. Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, would not let God's people go. Okay, Pharaoh number 3, or plague number 3. Then God sent a plague of gnats to bite and sting the people and the animals. But Pharaoh still did not listen. Look at the bugs all over him. Look, they just driving him crazy. They're in his eyes, they're crawling up his nose, they're in his ears, and he just is about going wild. Well, I didn't have the best for that, but the plague of gnats. Gnats. This is more like a water bug, really, but it gives you the idea, the plague of gnats. I did bring, well, let's stick with this one, the plague of gnats. Okay, so the plague of blood, the plague of frogs, and the plague of gnats. Okay, so God sent another plague because Pharaoh wouldn't listen. The plague of flies. Oh, how those Egyptians hated the flies. Well, I'll show you what I got for this one. This is more of an ant. It was really the plague of flies. I have a spider, and I have an ant. I could kind of pretend that this guy is a fly. Bzzz, constantly in your ears. Bzzz, that would drive you crazy. The plague of flies. So, plague of blood, plague of frogs, plague of gnats, all in your eyes and your ears, and the plague of flies. Okay, that's 4. How many are there altogether? 10. That's right. Okay. Pharaoh still would not listen. And so he would not let the people of Israel go. So God sent a plague on the animals, the horses, the donkeys, the camels, the sheep, the goats. They all began to die. Wow. Imagine the horses, the goats, the sheep, the camels. I brought a couple of cows because probably there were cows that died. I brought, imagine all the animals started to die. And they needed the animals because the cows would give them milk. Goats would give them milk. They needed them to live. But all the animals started to die. Wow, that was the 5th plague. Do you think Pharaoh decided to obey God yet? No, he didn't. He was hard-headed. Do you know what hard-headed means? He just wouldn't listen. He wouldn't listen to reason. He was hard-headed. Okay. So God sent a plague of sores. Pharaoh had so many sores on his body that he could hardly sit up. But he still would not listen to Moses. Sores. Whoa. I don't have any sores to show you. But you could get a cold sore on your lip. Imagine if you had those all over your body. Wow. So God sent a plague of hail. This would be number 7. Plague number 7. Lightning flashed and little balls of ice came down from the sky. Pharaoh did not like it at all. Look they're even pinging right off his head. Wow, that can be very violent. That can be very scary when in the middle of hot weather, all of a sudden the sky gets dark and then the hail starts to pour down. Wow. So that was number 7, I think. Let's see if we can name them because I'm starting to forget already. The plague of blood in the water. The plague of frogs. The plague of gnats, those tiny little flies that get in your eyes. The plague of flies, driving you crazy. The plague of the animals dying. I'm forgetting one. I'm forgetting 2. The plague of the animals, on the animals. The plague of sores. And the plague of hail. Wow. All right. Then God sent a plague of locusts, kind of like grasshoppers. And they started to eat and eat and eat, and they ate up the grass and the leaves on the trees and left every branch bare. Wow, look at those guys right there. Kind of like grasshoppers, and they are just an army. Everything would be just, the ground would be just moving. Looked like it was moving. There were so many grasshoppers or locusts eating. Wow. And then Pharaoh still wouldn't let the people go. So Pharaoh wouldn't listen, and God made the sky dark in the middle of the day. This was the next plague. The Lord made it dark in the middle of the day. And Pharaoh was angry this time. He said, "Don't ever come see me again," he told Moses. "All right," said Moses, "I won't come again." Now this is very sad. Are you ready? That was 9 plagues. How many left? 1. Plague of blood, the plague of frogs, the plague of gnats, the plague of flies, the plague on the animals, the plague of sores, the plague of hail, the plague of locusts, the plague of darkness. Wow. Now Pharaoh has had it, but he still won't let the people of Israel go. You see, in Egypt, people wrongly thought Pharaoh was like God. They put him up there as though he was God. And probably Pharaoh thought that he was God. But they also thought that every area in nature had its own God. There was a God in the river. There was a God in the fields. There was a God of the sun. And see, every time God sent a plague, he showed them that he was stronger, more powerful than their so-called gods. If their river had a god, then their river god was not able to stop God's plague of turning the water into blood. If their god of the sun, if they had a god of the sun, God was our God, the living God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, was stronger because he could turn it to dark in the middle of the day. You see? If they had a God of the fields, God was stronger because he sent the locusts to eat all the grass in the fields. So that's what these plagues were about. God was showing himself to be the Almighty Lord, the one with all the power. Because he made everything. The whole creation is from God, from God's heart, from God's mind, God's wisdom. He made it all for us. The last plague is really terrible. And this is because Pharaoh still would not let God's people go. "I will send one more terrible plague," said God. "So listen carefully and do what I say. Each family must put some blood from a lamb on the top and side of their door. Then they must eat a special dinner called the Passover meal." So the Israelites did as God told them. You see, we have barbecues, right? We have barbecues. And maybe we put a steak on the barbecue. Well, God's people, the steak that they would eat would be lamb's meat. So when they were, for this particular time, God gave them really specific directions. Take some of the blood from a lamb and use it like paint. Paint some of the blood on over the door, top of your door, and on the side of your door. And make sure you do that, people of Israel, because that blood is going to be a sign to me. I need to be able to see that, to know that this house belongs to an Israelite family. So make sure you do that, he was telling his people. And then you're going to eat a special dinner. So listen carefully. And he told them exactly how to prepare the meat for supper. And he told them to eat supper with their sandals on and with their staff in their hands. Like they had to be ready to go, because he was going to cause Pharaoh to let them go. And this meal had a special name, the Passover meal. Passover. If you use those two words together, Passover. If you go Passover, can you say that with me? Passover. But it has two words, pass and over. So here's an idea about Passover. Here, watch this. My hand is passing over the cow. I'm passing over. Okay? Okay, here's the. So that night, as they ate the meal with their staff in their hands, and they had painted the blood of the lamb, that's really important, the blood of the lamb over the door and on the side of the door post. That night, God's angel went through the land of Egypt. God's angel. Whoa, there it is, it's dark. And the angel of death passed right over every house with blood on the door. So the blood was a sign to the angel not to stop at that house. But the oldest son in each house of the Egyptians died. The Egyptians wailed and cried, "Oh, oh," because the oldest son in each Egyptian house died from the angel of death. The visit of the angel of death. Pharaoh sent for Moses. "Go away," he said. "Take all the Israelites with you." Wow. Finally, Pharaoh let the people of Israel go after the 10th plague.